Parent of the bride speech. Traditionally, the father of the bride speaks first. You may be introduced by the best man who might be acting as the MC, or you might have to grab everyone's attention yourself and introduce yourself. Either way, the core elements of your speech will largely be the same. The only difference will be that you may have to rally everyone's attention at the beginning. Tapping your glass gently with a spoon or a fork will usually do the trick as you start to stand up with the microphone and ask the ladies and gentlemen for their attention. Essentially, your role here is to welcome everyone to the wedding and lovingly share some memories and observations about your daughter and her new groom. As you'll be the first to speak, the guests will probably be happy to get going and generally supportive of the start of the proceedings. It's a good idea to start with a joke or get everyone to give a round of applause for the happy couple or the venue to get everyone in the mood for the speeches. You'll want to thank people for coming to the wedding, but the personal thank yous and individuals will be typically done by the bride and groom themselves later on. Your main focus is to compliment your daughter and to make her feel as special as possible on her big day. Your introduction. Unless you're having a very small and intimate wedding, you may not know everybody, and many of the relatives of the other family and guest partners won't know who you are, so you'll have to introduce yourself as a parent of the bride. You'll also want to thank everyone for coming and hope they're having a good time. The bride. Obviously, the main part of your speech should be about your daughter, but we're not looking for a recount of her life story. While it's perfectly acceptable and expected for you to be nostalgic at this point, the guests do not want to hear about every achievement from toilet training to present day in detailed chronological order. Try to pick out stories that highlight her personality, her sense of humor, or difficult times that she's overcome to become the woman she is today. Recalling personal memories of times that you spent together before she knew her groom or since are what the guests are really looking for here. These can be in the form of letting her groom know what he's let himself in for, or ways that her history has shown that she's a perfect match for the groom. If you have any personal stories about what happened in the background during the early stages of the courtship, if it's a trip that was planned or something that happened that you didn't know about until later, this can be a funny insight into how you knew that these two were meant for each other. The tone of your speech is very important, and it needs to be a mix of parental pride for your daughter's accomplishments and some funny stories thrown in to keep the mood light. There's a full video on how to start structuring your speech and how to brainstorm ideas. The best way to end your speech is with a final anecdote and a desire to see the happy couple build a loving and successful future together. Remember, you really want to keep your speech to 5 minutes or under. It may be tough to cut some anecdotes and some great stories from people in the wedding party, but if there are a few speeches, the guests will thank you for keeping it brief. You can always tell people that you have a few other stories that you had to cut from the speech in order to save your daughter's public humiliation, but you're more than happy to tell the stories one-on-one after the dinner.